Welcome to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to be with me and my guest. I greatly appreciate it. Well, we have a wonderful treat for you today. We're going to talk to William Berloni, a theatrical animal trainer that's based here in Connecticut. And Bill, thanks so much for being here. Such a treat. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Why don't we talk about you and your background? I was on your website. We'll talk about your website in a little bit, but your history is amazing. Take us back to your background. Tell us about yourself.
Oh my goodness. Well, I was born and raised in Berlin, Connecticut, on a farm. My dad was a horticulturist. And I go back that far because I didn't have any brothers or sisters. My mom got me a dog when I was 3 years old. So I was raised with a collie and a cat. So those animals weren't my pets, they were my companions. And that's how I remember growing up and my feelings toward animals. And then in high school, I decided I wanted to be an actor. So instead of wasting my summers away until I went to college, I applied for an apprenticeship at the Goodspeed Opera House here in East Haddam, Connecticut. And I loved being around professional actors and being backstage. My second summer there, the summer of 1976, they were doing a new play and it had a dog in it. And after they announced it, they realized dog trainers from New York were too expensive. And all the members of the paid staff, when producer Michael Price went to them and said, somebody's got to train the dog, they all threatened to quit. So he needed a sucker to train the dog for this new show. And somehow I was invited into his office one day. And he sat me down. He said, Billy, how would you like a part in one of our shows and your equity card? And I was 19 years old. And I thought, man, this man is brilliant. He knows how talented I am from the way I move scenery. And I said, of course, Mr. Price. And his response was, well, all you have to do is find and train the new dog for the new show. And I was like, sure, no problem. And that's how I got my first job. And after I came down off my high of becoming an actor, I thought, how am I going to do this? So they gave me $35 to find the dog, train it, and feed it all summer. And someone said they had cheap animals at the animal shelter. And that's where I found the original Sandy for the original production of Annie at the Goodspeed Opera House. Sandy did very well. He was a rescue. And a year later, the show moved to Broadway. And on April 21st, 1977, I became a world famous animal trainer at the age of 20. That's how it all started.
Did you think about or know that moving from an acting career into the animal world, if you will, that's something that you wanted to do? Did you want to just stay a pure actor?
Oh, absolutely. And, the thought to be on a Broadway show and be in New York and have an income so that I could take classes and all that stuff. In fact, Peter Gennaro was the choreographer of the original production of Annie, and he used to have tap dancing classes. So I studied with Peter, and and then they asked me to do the national touring companies, which I thought chance to make more money for when I'm a starving actor. And then I was asked to do the the revival of Camelot with Richard Burton. And I thought, man, any way to be in the room with Richard Burton, I'm going to be an animal trainer. And by the time I got offered my third Broadway show, I thought, you know what? I looked around at the chorus guys and I thought, I'm not as handsome or as talented as them. So I think I'll stick with this animal training thing. So it took 3 Broadway shows.
How did you feel about becoming an animal trainer? Is that something that became a natural part of your life and the next step?
Absolutely. In that, what was so unique about Annie was that there had never been an animal that was a character in a play or musical that the action depended upon. I mean, conventional wisdom up to then was you can't depend on an animal to do the same thing every night. And nobody told us that at Goodspeed. No one told me. So when when Annie opened, people came to the show and went, holy cow, this dog is acting. And so in making that happen, now I'm not only am I an animal trainer, but I work with the director. I work with the actors. And so the creativity of it all was much more in depth than just being the performer. So I found that very interesting. And so that's why I decided to stick with it.
Now tell me where you get your animals from. Where did you find Sandy?
Sandy came from the original Sandy came from the Connecticut Humane Society up in Newington. And the story was the day I went looking, I mean, I literally took a Polaroid camera in one of the trucks to go auditioning dogs, sandy colored dogs. He was the last one I saw, and he was terribly abused. And I saw him about 4 o'clock at the end of the day. So I went to the front desk and tried to explain to the man behind the desk that, hi, I'm casting a show and I need to take a picture of this dog so the director can approve it. And he looked at me and said, do you want the dog? I was like, well, no, I have to get it approved. He said, well, it's being put to sleep the next day. And I went, what? Because as a young man, I had never been to an animal shelter. And so I was already mortified by what I saw. But then when he explained that the dog was going to be put to sleep and killed because his time was up, all of a sudden there was an animal who was in peril and I had to do something to save his life. And I reached in my pocket and he said, the adoption fee is $7. And I reached in my pocket, I had $3. And when he saw that, he kicked me out and closed. So I ran back to the Opera House and tried to get somebody to okay him. Nobody did. I went back the next morning before they opened and adopted him. And at that moment, I made a promise to myself. I literally said, I remember these words, when I grow up, if I ever get another dog, I'm going to rescue it. And so that promise then became a reality when the producers of Annie on Broadway said, you need an understudy. So I adopted an understudy. And then all the other dogs throughout my career, we've adopted from shelters.
Tell me what it's been like being an animal trainer for film, television, commercials, videos, so on and so forth that I encountered on your website. What's it been like training the animals and doing it on set?
Personally, to communicate with another being, especially an animal, is always exciting and wondrous. The business, however, is horrible. There are no laws protecting animals on sets. There's no, animals are considered props. And so they're just things that they hire. And so my first foray into this was with the creators of Annie, Martin Charnin, Charles Strauss, and Tom Meehan, and we collaborated as you do in a theater. And so we all worked together to make it happen. And that was unique because we were like a family. Every job after that, the animals were treated like not well. And so I, of course, was always, I've been trying to raise awareness about animals in show business, the abuse that goes on there. And it took me 20 years before I could actually say to people, I'm not doing this job. And as opposed to suffering through it and just trying to manipulate the situation so the animals were cared for. After 45 years now, I'm considered an animal director. I'm not hired through the prop department, and I'm one of the only trainers that happens to because I could say no to a job. So the one-on-one with them is wondrous, and when you create something that moves audiences, that's wonderful. But the backstage aspect of it, not good.
Now, I also have encountered that you are a humane trainer. Tell me how you train these animals.
Well, going back to my childhood, imagine being 3 years old, living on a farm, no kids around, and your dog, if you pull your dog's tail as a kid, they're going to run away. And I would be very lonely. And then what I must have done was figure out that if I played their games, if I cared about their feelings, they would hang out with me, which is what happened with the dog that I had, the cat that I had. So again, the fact that they were my friends and not my pets gave me the basis of, well, how do we my dog came every time I called him. He was never on a leash. How do I get a dog to go on stage every time, 8 times a week? Well, he has to want to. So how do you make the stage, that place that's so crazy, comfortable for an animal and fun? So all the training became positive reinforcement, bonding the dog with the actors so that I wasn't telling them to go to that person. They were wanting to go to that person. Understanding that we all make mistakes. And if you make a mistake, being punished for it is not right, but we help you get through it and help you learn from it. So it's really a positive method of training, which was facilitated by my first job being a show where there was no second takes. So I had to design a technique that would guarantee an animal would work every time. And for those people in the audience who who have animals. If your dog loves you, they'll do anything for you. So that's the whole crux. That's the secret to my success, and I share it with everybody.
Now, I know that you've been in the industry for about 45 years. How was it when you first started out and moved through the process and through the years? How did you get the work?
Well, on Broadway, again, there had been other trainers before me. And, even in The Wiz was the show before Annie. They couldn't get the dog to do anything. And so that's why in The Wiz, Toto was in the first scene and in the last scene. And so this kid comes along and figures out, well, dog's going to stay on stage. You keep a dog on stage, the audience loves it. So so more shows started being developed with animals as characters. And hence my sort of place in theatrical history was sort of set. And then, film people heard about me. And early on in my career, I started doing TV and television, and I stopped. I stopped after a few years because it was just too painful for me to fight all the time about the way that I train. And again, it took about 30 years for it to come around. And there was a producer in Hollywood who was going to do a show called The Leftovers for HBO. And she read an article about me in the New York Times, and she called me and she said, Bill, I read this article. Is it true that you get animals to do that? I went, yep. She goes, well, I have this series that I'm doing in New York. I don't like the trainers. Are you willing to work on it? I said, nope. And she said, what? I said, no, I'm not interested. And she asked why, and I told her the story, and it made perfect sense. It made perfect sense. So this one producer helped me get through on this show called The Leftovers, and when the film industry saw that, I got it on the first take, which is what we do in theater. Got it on the first take. All of a sudden, people are like, hey, this guy. If you go to my website, I've never advertised to be in the film industry. And so it was just word of mouth that gets me that work.
Well, hold that thought. We're going to take a break. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You're tuned into Arts and Entertainment. We'll be right back.
Dad?
Just 1 minute, okay?
Hey, Bobo, do trees tell each other stories?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, why don't we go find out? Listen.
Do clouds take naps?
I couldn't tell you.
Can birds draw pictures?
I don't have an answer for that.
Dad, do stars visit their friends?
Look!
And welcome back to Arts and Entertainment. I'm Deborah Gilbert, your host. Thanks so much again for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Well, I hope you're enjoying the show. We have William Berloni, a theatrical animal trainer for the entertainment industry, that's here as my guest today. And Bill, again, thank you for taking time out. I know that you're busy. We appreciate it.
No problem.
Let's talk about your website. It's wonderful, filled with incredible information. Tell me about it.
Well, you just sort of work, and I never really counted or looked back. And then, someone said, you need a website. So we started that. And what I hope for both visitors and producers to learn is that there's a better way to train animals. And in addition to the work that I've done in entertainment, for the last 25 years, I've been the director of animal training and behavior for the Humane Society of New York. Now, it's a no-kill shelter in New York City, and I can volunteer my time once a week because they can't afford a full-time trainer and they're small. And so I do so much public relations and stuff for them in real time about humane education. I wanted my website to reflect that as well.
I'm thinking about the viewer that's watching us now that might be interested in the industry and becoming an animal trainer. Do you have some advice as to how somebody can get started?
My first advice would be don't. I'm getting close to retiring, and the only way to become an advocate and change this industry is for me to quit. Because once I quit, I could speak out and there won't be ramifications to my income. Right now, it's really tough. And I started my career with a hit show that financially set me up for the rest of my career. If you're starting out and you're only making $300 on a commercial or a film set, and you're working once a month, how do you sustain that? How do you have enough trained animals when they call, when they want a Chihuahua, when they want a Saint Bernard? How do you have all those animals? And it's really tough. All our animals live in our house. We have 25 rescue dogs here who are all actors, animal actors. But our house is specially designed. We even did a reality show about it called From Wags to Riches with Bill Berloni for the Discovery Channel. Because they're not in kennels, they're still our pets, and we manage them that way. So you can't just get a kennel, and this is what they do in Hollywood. You get a kennel or a zoo and you put animals in cages, and when you need them, you pull them out. Well, as someone who works in a shelter, keeping an animal in a cage its entire life has devastating effects on it. So it's such a niche market that, you're better off, if you want to do something like this, is training an animal and then being represented by an agent like me. Because even though I have 25 animals, I still don't have a golden retriever. I still don't have a dachshund. I still don't have many different breeds, but I represent people who've trained their animals humanely. And then I go with them on set and coach them how to do it. So if anybody has the urge to want to work with their animals in show business, I would suggest something like that. But please, don't send me a picture and say, look at how cute my dog is. It should be in show business. And my first question is it trained? And they go, no, it's just very cute. And everybody stops me on the street. And, it's like, okay, if somebody's going to pay you $100 an hour for a dog to do something and it can't, does that make any sense? So work with your animals, work with your dogs, your cats, your birds, your hamsters, whatever, and reach out to me in that vein, and I could actually get them some work.
Tell us about COVID. How has it affected your industry?
Well, as we all know, it has devastated the theater industry, not just Broadway, but 10% of the work I do is on Broadway. The 90% are in regional theaters like the Goodspeed, like Hartford Stage, like Long Wharf, or theaters all around the country who do productions of with animals in them, or national tours. Those markets have been devastated. So as of March 15th, all our work stopped. And we were concerned. I mean, only because the care and maintenance of our animals alone is $10,000 a month. And we knew our savings without any income coming in was going to deplete that. And in June, the theater industry, the Broadway community got together and started a GoFundMe page to help us. And all this love came back from all the people I've worked with over the years. And without the help of the theater community and those supporters, Dorothy and my wife and I would have had to either find homes for all these animals and quit, or go into tremendous debt, which we never would have gone out of. So I think some of the 200 dogs that I've trained over my life and saved were looking down on us and sent us some help.
Now, at your farm in Connecticut, you have all of these animals. What's your day like taking care of them? People think animal training is fun, but it's animal husbandry. So whether you have a stable with a horse or cows or whatever, you have to get up and you have to feed them. You have to clean them. You have to exercise them, take care of them. And it's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week task. And so your life revolves around their care, which is morning, usually noon, midday, evening,
And in the middle of those times, you have to train them, you have to do your work, you have to be on the computer, you have to take phone calls. So it's a life we've chosen. And prior to the pandemic, we had 2 full-time employees. And now, until we can get back on our feet, my wife and I are doing it all by ourselves. So it's, again, I wish I was 20 years old starting out. But they're still our family, and you don't ever stop to think that it's a burden. It's just, we have to take care of each other.
On your website, I also encountered that you're an author. Tell me what it's been like writing books.
Oh my goodness. Well, when Annie first opened, the original production, I got a call from a publisher at Simon & Schuster saying she had seen a New York Times Magazine article about me. And she said, "Is it true that you found this dog and it's a Broadway star?" And I went, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, I'd like to write a book." Okay. I was like, "I don't know. I've never written a book. We'll get you a ghostwriter." And so people were incredulous in the industry that, wait a minute, somebody called you from Simon & Schuster and said they're going to do a book, and you said yes? I went, yeah. So my first book was called Sandy, the Autobiography of a Star, which was basically a children's book told from Sandy's point of view of his journey. Someone in the mid 80s wrote me and said, "We're doing a book about yoga for dogs, and we want you to help us with it." I went, "You can't do yoga with dogs." So we did a book called Doga, in which I got dogs to do the poses for yoga. But then about 12 years ago, again, when I was getting frustrated with the treatment of animals, I had this vision of doing a book called Broadway Tales, the inside story of animals on Broadway, in which I told it's a rescue book, and each chapter is a Broadway show from the rescue story through to the end. And in it, I talk about some harrowing backstage experiences with producers and actors, so that the people understand that it wasn't all fun and games. It was always a fight to maintain their safety and care. So it's tongue in cheek, just far enough that I don't get sued by anybody, but absolutely truthful. And the good news is every story had a happy ending. The animals remained with us, but that was just a way to sort of start getting that backstage look at what really goes on, because the public isn't allowed to see that.
For television, video, commercials, film, etc., theater, how on earth, I mean, I'm thinking about an animal, you mentioned geese and so on and so forth that you have as animals on your website. How on earth do you train them?
First off, I had only had cats and dogs. And when I started getting, in my early career, I started getting calls for lions and tigers and chimpanzees and all those exotic animals. And when I started doing research into the people who had them and trained them, I was appalled. I mean, the conditions under which those animals are kept are just terrible, and they shouldn't be there anyways. So I never got into anything that was exotic. We only work with things you could find in a pet shop, on a farm, that sort of thing, domesticated animals, basically. And so over the years, we would just educate ourselves about how do you hand tame a goose. You get them when they hatch and you imprint them on you. So the geese we got for, oh my goodness, what was the name of the show? Irish play. Anyway, I can't remember it. We got them in when they were in eggs, and they hatched, and they were in our hands, and so they thought we were their parents, and so they grew up to be hand tamed and able to be manipulated. And that's all that you could basically do with a farm animal, is make sure it's calm, make sure it feels safe, and pick the quietest one to be on stage. So whether it's that, or rabbits, or pigeons, or again, you can't train them to do behaviors, but you can domesticate them and let them feel at least comfortable in the situation.
What does the future look like for animals to be in entertainment productions? Is this something that's going to continue?
Absolutely. I think we all love to see fur faces on or feathered faces on camera. There's something about those that comfort us. I'm imagining when theater opens, I will not have enough dogs to do Annie, The Wizard of Oz, or Legally Blonde around the country, because they're all feel-good shows, and we only have so many dogs that can do the role. Sort of as an idea that my wife and I had, I wanted to do a show that starred a dog, not just played the sidekick. And my wife, Dorothy, over 20 years ago, got the rights to a book called Because of Winn-Dixie by Kate DiCamillo, about a girl who comes to town with her preacher dad, and we find out her mom has run away, and she finds this giant dog in the supermarket and calls it Winn-Dixie, and how the animal affects her life and the lives of the community around it. We got Duncan Sheik from Spring Awakening to do the music. We got Nell Benjamin from Legally Blonde to do the book and lyrics. And John Rando, Tony Award-winning John Rando, director, to put it together. And it's a beautiful story. And we're trying to get it to Broadway. And we had a successful run at the Goodspeed Opera House back in 2019. We were geared up. I mean, it was our 4th out-of-town tryout. We were geared up to come into New York. And now that the theater is very unstable, we don't know what will happen in terms of being able to present that. But I feel a story like that, in which an animal is the main character, will help the audience really understand what animals feel. And people learn a lot from that. So that's my future. That's our hope. I continue to want to train animals humanely so that people can enjoy their performances.
Well, Bill, we've run out of time, and I want to thank you very much for being my guest today. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And we've been talking with Bill Berloni, a theatrical animal trainer for the entertainment industry based here in Connecticut. I'm Deborah Gilbert. You've been tuned into Arts and Entertainment. Have a terrific day today. Thanks again for tuning in. See you next time.